started since it is a little after 1. And one of the weird quirks of Zoom, I have learned, is that if you put stuff in the chat before people show up, then the new arrivals can't see it in the chat. So I was kind of waiting until almost everybody was here to stick the agenda in here so that you could all see that. And Craig and Emily, who are the first updaters, are here, but maybe we could first do just a short round of introductions, because I see at least one name on the screen that I do not know. And so we may as well go around and do intros. So I'm Angie Hong. I coordinate the East Metro Water Resource Education Program and am housed out of Washington Conservation District in Washington County. And I see Mike Eisensee to my right.
Hi, I'm Mike, administrator with the Carnelian Marine St. Croix Watershed District.
And maybe if each of you, Mike, just pass it to somebody and everybody just pass it to another person.
Oh, sure. Emily.
Hi, Emily Hines. I'm with Comfort Lake Forest Lake Watershed District. I'm on the planning team and the kind of admin team and the work plan, and been doing sort of the work plan, and I'll be doing the reporting. I'll pass it to Jay.
Hey everybody, I'm Jay Riggs, District Manager of the Washington Conservation District, and I think I'm on every committee except one. Matt.
Matt Moore, Administrator at South Washington Watershed District, and I'm here to keep Bowser straight.
Bowser's not here to be kept straight, are they? I don't think anybody from Bowser's here yet.
That's why I'm keeping them straight.
If you hear that muffled sound in the background, that might be Bowser.
Okay, I see Karen next to you, Matt.
Karen Kill with Browns Creek Watershed District.
Okay, and then there's a whole bunch of folks with cameras off that I don't know if you're actually here or not. Hi. I didn't want to call on anybody if they weren't actually in the room. Jamie, you want to go next?
Yeah, Jamie Sherban with the Anoka Conservation District and the Sunrise River WMO.
Okay.
Amy, how many decks do you have on that house? Because it seems like every time we have a meeting with you, you're at a different location with a different color in the background.
Yeah, today I actually discovered it's nice out. Did you guys know that?
Mm-hmm.
It is.
If you go outside, it's nice. And so, yeah, I'm actually outside today, but I got 3. One's enclosed and heated though.
With a blue background.
Yeah, kind of off-whitish.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Enviable. Craig, you want to go next?
Craig Mal, Chisago Sun Water Staff. Kind of got through, to be honest with you. I haven't seen Emily much. Her and I spent so much time together in March and April going through that work plan stuff. It's been kind of nice having a little break, hasn't it, Emily? Been not quite as much work. So I did send her some emails yesterday, some stuff to review. So we'll follow up on that in a little bit. Thanks.
Maureen.
Hi, Maureen Hoffman with Washington County Public Health and Environment.
All right. Tiffany.
Tiffany Detterman, Isanti Soil and Water.
Zach.
Hey, Zach. I'm the new district technician at Pine County Soil and Water. I'm probably that name that you don't recognize.
Yes,
I started
welcome.
at the beginning of the month. Thank you.
I know I didn't want to single you out, but you are. You're the person I didn't know yet. So welcome. Nice to meet you.
Welcome, Zach.
How about Susanna?
Hi, Susanna Wilson-Witkowski, Water Resource Manager with Chisago County, and I will be turning off my camera. I'm trying to eat lunch quick.
That's okay.
So.
All right. How about Paul?
Hi everyone, Paul Swanson, the District Manager at Pine Soil and Water.
Awesome. So you and Zach are together.
Yes, we're together. We're both kind of new at this, so we're tag teaming it.
Yeah. Is there anybody else I missed? Did I get everyone who's here right now? I think that's everyone. Okay, so the first item on the agenda was updates on the watershed-based implementation funds grant, subcontracts, all of that kind of stuff that Craig and Emily worked so hard on. So I don't know which one of you would like to go first, but take it away.
Well, I can start, Emily, and please add in. As all of you guys know, the watershed-based implementation funds grant was approved and signed off by Bowser on March 31st, which I liked very much because it made it easy for subcontracts. We just started everything on April 1st of a quarter and everything. So that went great. The subcontracts, I worked closely with Jeff Fuge, Assistant County Attorney, that did a lot of our, oh, I'm sorry, I'll turn my camera on here. Did a lot of our JPA grant agreements. That was great having someone with a lot of background. So far, the sub-grant agreements have been approved by my board with the Washington Conservation District for activities 1, 3, and 10. 1 and 3 being for staff, new staff, I should say, which I'll let them give updates later on. And number 10 being administrative type services. And then we approved the contract also with Comfort Lake Forest Lake Wash District for activity number 10. So those are going very well. As we made one sub-agreement that our goal is we have to add things. We can just do amendments to them. So I don't have to have separate agreements with each. I don't have to have multiple agreements with each LGU. We can just do amendments and that'll work well. We have a program log that's set up. I'm working with Emily. I emailed her yesterday, kind of a draft invoice material that I want her to look over, make sure that's everything on there that we need. So as you guys are getting ready to turn in invoices, it'll kind of be like the planning grant. You'll give us your email invoice or that we talked about, and then we'll have some detailed information for you to turn in also. So finalizing that, I am working with Bowser. I did send them an email as a follow-up to a meeting we had on Monday with a couple of you on cost share contracts. And so watch for more information on the cost share contracts that we'll be developing. We'll still be using hopefully your contract, or we'll to be determined exactly what we're going to do, but we're working with Bowser on the cost share contract process. At that, I guess, Emily, I'll turn it over to you.
Sure. I'll just add that, in addition to the invoice template, we're kind of trying to upfront get all these templates together so that when we actually get into the implementation, like Craig said, it goes kind of smooth. We've got the processes in order. And so we need to report to Bowser on an annual basis for the grant. And so that's what I'll be in charge of, is reaching out to people and kind of getting that information of what did you implement, what were the outputs achieved, or the outcomes achieved, and description of work, things like that. And then just compiling it all into this one big template to give to Bowser. And then we had also talked about maybe doing some more frequent updates just for the sake of the policy committee, keeping them in the loop. And so on a quarterly basis, kind of wrangling that information, maybe to a lesser extent. I don't know. I think kind of we'll see how much we get done, and then me and Angie will work together to send out something to the policy committee as just progress update. Here's what we're doing. Yeah, I don't think I have anything else for updates.
I guess the only thing I would add is, our goal would be that it goes through the subcommittee, kind of then through the planning team, through the steering committee, and then ultimately the SWC board. My board would be just making the, formalizing those agreements. So everything will come through this work group before it goes to our board. Thank you, Angie.
Yeah. So which of the subcommittees have met?
Do you want to just go in order? Angie, you want to just go activity 1 and just go in order? We can get updates. Some might have little or nothing and just go that route.
That is a great idea. And I don't have the thing open to remind myself of which thing is which. So activity number 1, I want to say was ag. Was that the ag staff or the
correct
ag staff?
Ag staff.
Okay, that's Jay.
Yep, thank you. The conversation for bringing on the agronomist specialist hasn't started yet. We were waiting until we were done with the bringing on the educator. So that will be starting very soon. So we'll look for a doodle poll.
Jay, do you want to just go into activity 3 since we're talking this shared services type program?
I'll let Angie give the update.
was just going to ask you, well, I meant to touch base with you ahead of time to ask you how much of an update you wanted to give. So
We can't give specifics.
yes,
So I'll do the update then. So anyway, we have the subcommittee for the educator position is made up of Jerry and Susanna from Chisago. Thank you, Susanna, for your work. Jackie Anderson from Comfort Lake, Janet Hegland from Sunrise WMO, Angie, and myself. And we, as you know, I think you probably know, we received 61 applications for the job. 27 met the minimum requirements. We invited 8 in for interviews, finished those interviews Thursday and Friday of last week. Met as a subcommittee again on Monday morning and decided on our #1 candidate and made an offer. And so we're waiting for a response from the applicants. We're right in the middle of that whole process.
yeah.
So it's moving along well. And we had, I think, honestly, 5 out of the 8 candidates we interviewed would probably do a great job. And the top 3, the committee pretty much all agreed on were very good, very good. And so there isn't I don't have any concerns. If our #1 candidate does not accept, then we'll be able to move on to our #2s and #3, and they would be outstanding as well. They all had different strengths. And so we were really in a fortunate position to have some really amazing people to pick from. So folks will know as soon as we know.
Mhm.
Everybody wants to work with Angie.
That was one thing that Jackie said on Monday morning during our discussion was she was congratulating Angie for having a program that every single one of the candidates we interviewed was like super impressed with. And so, yeah, it was, the recognition was there, and people were showering Angie and Angie's program with a lot of praise. So that was really good to hear.
I will echo Jay. It was a super high caliber group of candidates. It was, for me, it was very energizing talking to the candidates because there was just a lot of very dynamic, creative, ambitious people. And it was kind of fun talking with the selection committee too, and just getting everybody's different perspectives on what a successful watershed education program will look like in the future. So like
Yeah.
Jason, whoever we get, it's going to be great. Yeah.
Angie, how long have you been here?
It is going to be my 15-year anniversary in June, Matt.
Yes, and you came very highly recommended.
Way back when.
Congratulations to you.
Thank you.
Good job, Angie.
So, activity #2.
Why don't we kind of lump 2, 4, and 5 together? And Mike and I, you want to kind of go together with those, Mike?
Okay.
So 2, 4, and 5 are 2 is the structural ag BMP, 4 is the non-structural ag and urban BMPs, and 5 is structural urban. Mike, Jay Riggs, Jamie Sherban, and Becky Wazzy and I met on Monday to kind of start the process going, because we wanted to have Becky part of the discussion with the wetlands a little bit on the CASHA contracts. We haven't pulled together our committees yet. We decided to wait till after today's meeting to have that discussion. But we had a good meeting, and my goal is to get the subcommittee together here now in May and start moving forward. I do need to work, like I said, I'm working with Bowser. I've sent them emails on some information on CASHA contracts and how they want to do that, because I'll be part of that discussion. We also need to work on non-structural land management practices and having a policy that all of the partners adopt for both the urban and ag. So those are things we're working through also. So Mike, do you want to add some more to that, please?
Sure. I think the only other piece that really stands out to me is that we're also want to have as much consistency on the selection criteria as possible between the programs. So we're talking about starting with a collaborative list of selection criteria, and then maybe then break into the subgroups and consider those and add on to them. So we don't have 2 separate criteria sets to work from. Maybe just 2 that are very similar, but slightly different.
We did talk about kind of the difficulty. There's traditional ag projects, there's traditional urban projects, but there's a lot of things in between. And so we'll have to, the pollution reduction numbers for urban are pretty steep. On the urban side, we're a little concerned about that. So, but we're going to try to look at this as an overall program between the 2, or I should probably say 3, but the ag and urban structural BMPs. So we will need to make sure that we're trying to meet our goals for both. We realize when we can move 10% of the funds around and things like that. So But there will be those, if we can put things into the urban side, then we're kind of, if we can tie them to the urban, that would be one of our goals too, to try to meet those goals.
Okay.
And we're going to limit funding for any one partner to 1/16 of the pot. I want to see if I got Matt Moore's reaction at all, but so far nothing.
That was not the consensus of the committee.
Be a problem.
I was already starting to type that into the notes, and then I was like, really?
No, that was just for Matt's benefit.
Thank you, Craig.
You're welcome, Matt.
I already warned Matt that I had told the group about Matt's plans, so.
We have 2 projects that are shovel ready. One this year we need 300,000, and one next year we need another 300,000. So we're gonna have to move some money around.
Right.
We have a project this summer that's delivering 250 tons of sediment to Lower St. Croix a year.
Do you think we can equate that to 1 pound of phosphorus for a ton of sediment to give us 250 pounds of phosphorus? And that's a traditional number.
250 tons of sediment per year.
So Mike, that would get you your 200 pounds for urban in a hurry.
Yep. No, it's a great project, that's for sure.
Yeah. So we'll definitely map this.
Project next year on the Trout Brook down at Afton Alps that will increase habitat and reduce sediment straight to the St. Croix.
I guess that's one thing we did add, Mike. We're going to work on getting a list from all the partners of kind of what they feel shovel-ready projects for both 2021 and 2022. So that's a good point. If you guys have projects that you know of, and we can send this out more of a formal email request, probably Angie would be the best thing. But if you can get together your list of projects before our next steering committee, it'd be a good discussion point for the subcommittees also. But think about your shovel-ready projects.
Craig, these are the ones I asked you about where to put them in the work plan.
Yep, I remember that.
So, I mean, our project is on the street right now for bids.
These are all be things, Matt.
Pre-bid meeting.
These are all things, Matt, that we'll definitely be as a subcommittees working on and bringing forward to the steering committee for discussion.
Yeah, we're gonna have to shift some dollars because we need those dollars for shovel-ready projects.
Jamie, did you want to give any update on number 6, the wetland side?
Yeah.
Right. We've not yet met on the wetland side, so that'll be coming up soon.
But wetlands was part of our discussion on Monday. We're going to try to be consistent with cost share contracts, that type of work.
Right. The things that you've mentioned already. Yes.
Sorry, I realized I'm not doing a very adept job at taking notes and muting and unmuting as the dog is barking and listening. Has not met yet. Okay. Let's see. Activity number, what's coming up next? 7, internal analyses. I think that was Susanna.
Yes, our activity 7 group met on Monday, and that is myself and Blaine Einecker, if I'm pronouncing his name correctly, with Comfort Lake Forest Lake Watershed.
Oh, Blaine. Okay, yeah.
And Jamie, Anoka Soil and Water Conservation District, and Mike, Cornelian Marine, and then Jerry Spetzman, the Chisago Lakes Lake Improvement District. And we had come up with a sort of a draft list of selection criteria to select the lakes for internal load analyses. We have a current list of about 12 items. And we also discussed including the Bowser feasibility study requirements in developing the consultant quote and applicant request. And so overall, we hope to develop a 1 to 2 page application form, including consultant criteria, and have that ready by the end of May so we can send out requests for quotes by late summer or fall in order to receive proposals to keep on with the time frame then by next summer to complete the analyses. And so we would like to ask the steering committee to just review our current our ideas, our list of 12, the selection criteria, just to see if there's any other items to add. And then also ask the steering committee if the original intent with the plan was only to include alum management, or if we talked about alum, iron, or carp management as approaches to controlling the internal load. And for internal load analyses. So we wanted to bring that up to the group to discuss, and it could either happen at this meeting, or we could send it out in an email as an option to discuss.
Does anybody have an
So if
answer
anyone
to
from the
that,
committee
or is that something
wants to follow up with that?
All right, it doesn't sound like anybody.
Well, just doing a quick word search in the comprehensive watershed management plan, it looks like on page 42, it says perform alum treatment, carp management, or other methods identified in a feasibility studies to reduce internal loading. So seems like it could be anything.
Okay. That's great. Then we can keep moving forward with our thoughts and with our plan. But we hope to schedule another meeting here in the late May, early June, so we can keep moving and stick with our timeline to be able to send out the quotes by late summer, early fall.
Late May or early June.
That's all. Yeah. Thank you.
Just good job, Susanna. I appreciate you getting going on that one right away. That's great. Just FYI to the group, we do have one lake association, the Rush Lake Improvement Association, that actually has some funding they'd like to put into this project if they're selected. So there might be a source of some additional match dollars of local dollars. So just FYI.
Okay.
Thank you.
So let's see here. What do we have next? We have group number 8, targeting analysis.
This will be a quick update. I'll be doodling for the subcommittee soon.
The end.
The end. Respectfully submitted.
Okay.
I prioritized your support team over that subcommittee, Angie.
Okay, wonderful. Thank you, Jay. Yeah, I was hoping your update would buy me time to save the minutes that I'm typing while we're talking so that they don't accidentally get deleted as I'm hitting all these buttons.
And I can always fill empty airspace.
Angie, I'll move on to activity 9, technical assistance engineering. Mike and I will be overseeing that one together also from the ag and urban side of things. We did touch this a little bit, but we'll be working on this one as the process as we work through activities 2, 4, and 5.
Okay, and it doesn't seem like we would probably have any other updates related to administration and coordination other than what you and Emily said at the beginning of the meeting.
All subcommittee agreements have been developed, so staff are up and running on those.
Yep.
Activity.
Okay, so we are off to a running start, and then we could move on to the big hairy format for sharing the annual work plan with the policy committee. So why don't I show you what is going on right now inside of this spreadsheet that I was asking everybody to fill out. And this is both an Emily question and an everybody question. So in this spreadsheet, I added a column for people to, enter in what kind of stuff that they are doing that is working towards goals in the St. Croix watershed plan above and beyond what's being funded through the WBIF grant. And so it looks like a number of partners, in some cases there's 2 partners that have entered in stuff that is going on in some of these categories. I think if I open up this one, this might be one, maybe not. there were some of these categories in any case that you could see that there was many people who had entered in information. There's a couple of categories that are still sitting empty, and I guess the question is anybody actually doing anything towards these categories? If they're in the plan, presumably somebody put them in there for a reason. You know, and if nobody is actually doing anything toward these categories, you know, what does that mean for in terms of us achieving the goals of our plan according to Bowser when they're reviewing, you know, in the future? But the question that I have more so for the group and for Emily, you know, we had an outline version of the WBIF grant, and you know, it's broken up into the 10 activities and what amount of funding each will get. And then there's this requirement from Bowser that we also create an annual plan. And you know, in terms of sharing that out both with the policy committee to be approved and sharing it out with Bowser, well, you know, what should that look like? And I'll go, you know, is it, because that table is kind of big and scary, so I wouldn't want to show that table to the policy committee. And looking at some of the examples that Bowser had sent us from other One Watershed One plans, they are very, very simple, and also they are doing so much less than what we're doing that it's almost impossible to even compare their plans to ours. If you look at, you know, some of the ones from the other One Watershed One plan, it will say something like, we are planning on doing 3 workshops during the course of this, you know, 2-year plan, and we will put in, you know, 5 grassed waterways and work with 10 farmers on cover crops. You know, it's just something so simple and minimal compared to ours that it's hard to kind of wrap my mind around what our plan would look like in a manageable way that's not going to create a lot of extra work for any of us. I don't know if anybody has any thoughts or ideas on that. This is when everybody goes dark.
I have a,
Go ahead, Matt.
a ravine going to the St. Croix and a creek going to St. Croix. 2 projects that we have on the books for the next 2 years.
Oh, you have ones that you want me to add into this table? Is that what you're saying?
I'm not sure. I asked Craig, I'm not sure where they go. Craig,
Okay.
you're gonna have to help me.
Okay.
They'll need to be added under the BMP activities.
It might be where we get the money though.
So,
Jay?
I'm
where
here.
do we take the money?
I honestly think that for the next step in the process, we need to actually send that message out to all of the partners, kind of in follow up with the structural, non-structural kind of program conversation.
Okay.
And then get that list of, because I was proposing kind of three parts of funding, you know, where we'd have like non-structural incentive program and have some funding allocated to that, a cost share program for smaller scale practices, and then a CIP like funding approach and how we structure the program. But we'd need to get feedback from the rest of the group. So I think the next step is to just pitch it. And, you know, if we have some shovel ready projects that we're going to be able to like check the box for this first 2 years, and we don't have a lot of competition for the funds, then I think it's going to be it may be a relatively easy decision, and we're going to shift funds around and make it happen. So I think we just need to go through those steps. And then I I mean, there's quite a few spots where we can shift some dollars around, but I don't think we're going to want to take away from the staff side of it. So that's, I mean, that's a big chunk of the hours too. And so,
Yeah,
but
I'm
I
not
don't-
proposing that, but there
Yeah.
might be some studies and stuff that have to go out a year or two.
yeah, and that puts some of the other areas in the watershed at a disadvantage where they need to have some sub-watershed analyses done sooner
it.
rather than later to be able to ID projects. But we can then pick and choose, you know, if we want to do 1 or 2 SWAs and get those moving in some underserved portions of the watershed. But I want to look at the numbers. I mean, we need to have all the numbers in front of us for us to be able to really start talking about where we're shifting the dollars around yet so far.
Okay, I mean, I get it.
Yeah.
But I'm just saying some things might have to push back because we got 2 projects ready to go.
Yep. And your timeline is pretty constrained. I mean, we need to make decisions relatively soon.
Yeah, because we got it on the street for bids.
Yep.
Okay, so I hear there's 2 kind of separate conversations that I think we're having right now. One is, when do we decide what the specific things are that happen within each of these activity categories and get approval from the steering committee and the policy committee that yes, that's what we want to spend the money on. And then the second thing is, you know, we have this list of activities that we've already brought to the policy committee, but there's this requirement that we have an additional overarching plan that also lists what activities we're doing on our own. And so what's the best format for how that information gets shared out? Is it just, you know, a longer Word document? Is it a table? You know, like what? Because I think that the annual plan thing needs to happen first, and the actual project approval can happen second or throughout the year.
So Angie, I guess I envision for the annual plan, correct me if I'm wrong, Bowser, the requirement for the annual plan is because we have that in our comprehensive watershed management plan. And that's what we said we were going to do. It's not a Bowser necessarily requirement. I mean, they're going to make sure we're accomplishing everything that's in our plan. I didn't see close enough, Angie, with I haven't opened up the Excel spreadsheet because I know I put my stuff in there. I've looked at it lately. If there's stuff in it that's still blank, I guess is why is that blank? I mean, who brought it forward? Are we just not doing it this year? I don't see a need to make this real difficult. I think we take what we have in there and we build together, you know, a 1 or 2 page, whether it's a Word document or table. And I hate to say this for Emily, but she does a great job of putting this stuff together. have a 1 or 2 page document that we just bring to the policy committee. It's our annual plan of the work that's going to get done collectively without watershed-based implementation funds. And it includes the watershed-based implementation funds, I should say, but it's the work above and beyond just the watershed-based implementation funds. And I don't think we need to spend a lot of time on it because Bowser, my understanding, Bowser cannot disapprove our annual plan.
No. And I only mention them because Barb and Dan has repeatedly been asking when we are going to have the annual plan, just when I was breathing a sigh of relief that we had the WBIF plan. But I agree with you, Craig, that my preference would be for it to be the simplest thing possible because of the amount of work that we've already put into everything else and the amount of work that's already going to go into everything else we're doing. Karen?
I think it's going to be important to see those blanks, not because we're worried about getting in trouble or not, but a number of those items went in there because, you know, we went through a process to identify, you know, where are our gaps? What don't we think we're already doing? What don't we have time to do or resources to, you know, the information to make it happen or the funding to make it happen. And if, you know, we're consistently seeing that there are items on that list, you know, that nobody's tackling, then that's when we need to reassess and say, well, is this even a priority to begin with? Or how do we make this happen then as a group? Do we need to find funding in order to make this a priority or happen? I think it's easiest to see projects in a graphic kind of way, you know, if there's a way even to have a shared GIS with, you know, spread, you know, shape file with dots for projects. Kind
yeah.
of show where they are or what, you know, code them by what they are, quick thing. And then maybe just a quick listing of programs or something, but I don't know. I think it's hard to relook through that whole document. My whole family decided to come into this room, so I'm going to go back on mute.
Yeah, I understand, Karen. The similar thing has happened to me. Okay, I like that suggestion of a graphical format to show where projects might happen. I think especially for the policy committee, that will be really appreciated to see that, you know, hopefully there's a geographical spread to where things are happening. What else did Karen just say? The gaps. I agree also, because when I looked through and I saw a lot of gaps, and it left a question in my head because I wasn't sure if they were gaps because people just hadn't got around to filling out the sheet and they're doing something anyway, or if they actually are gaps, in which case, why are they in the plan in the first place if nobody is working on them and there's no funding for it? Or if we need to do it, then we got to apply for some other outside funding. Matt.
Thank you, Angie. Just dots on the map are okay if it's on an annual basis. And just remember what the white paper said was a 1, 2, and 3 year work plan. So we're supposed to be able to say what we're going to do in year 1, year 2, and what we're planning for in year 3. So I just want everybody to remember that's the concept of one watershed, one plan. And Bowser has totally dismissed that. And I'm sorry, because we're in a big discussion about watershed-based funding in the metro area with Bowser. And I'm pretty sure that John Jaski is pretty mad at me and someone else.
So is it fair to say for you guys, if you haven't filled in the Excel spreadsheet, try to get it done by this Friday, because then next week, I think Emily, you said you'd take a stab at doing it or putting it to a Word document.
Or perhaps it's something, Emily, you and I can work on together.
Yeah, because the implementation table has a lot of different things in it and some overlap. I'm thinking there's 66 numbered items. So maybe we just have a thing for all 66, and then, you know, it's called an inventory and map of all areas of wetland loss and historic wetlands is locally verified. That's like, I don't know. It's just, I don't know. It's so big, and I've been hesitant to even figure out how to do it because it's a lot of items.
But is there any reason we can't take that spreadsheet then? That's just our annual plan? I mean, I know it's big and cumbersome, but really does it?
No, we need to decide what things we're going to do this year.
That's not going to happen for a little while, Matt. We're going to have ongoing requests for cost share dollars and project dollars, and the internal analysis committee doesn't have the lakes figured out yet, and the SWAS committee doesn't have that stuff figured out yet.
And that's why we should take the things that are ready to go this year and do them.
You know, Matt, the problem with that, we have an approved agenda for the 1.26 million that the policy committee approved. We have it approved by Bowser. We can move 10% around without needing board conservationist approval, but those are some of the issues we have. And so if we come back to the policy committee and want to make major changes, it's going to take approval of the policy committee. I'd have to look back at what the bylaws say, but it's going to take approval of the policy committee for that recommendation.
That's all right. My problem is that Bowser staff can approve it, because that's complete crap. It's a local plan. We decide what we're gonna do this year. If we have projects ready to go, we ought to build them.
I don't disagree with you, Matt, but we have the process we went through locally was to develop the 10 activity budget. And that 10 activity budget is what was submitted to Bowser and approved, working through the local process.
This is just like, this is just like when we had to amend the work plan for starting this process. If we decide we're gonna amend it, we're gonna amend it. And we tell them we're amending it.
But even so, doing that, making a major amendment requires, does it not require that work plan going back to all of our separate boards upon recommendation by the policy committee?
The way this is set up, yes.
So that in itself is a big deal.
And then ultimately it has to go to the Chisago SWCD board for the recommendation to be submitted to Bowser. Because the grant agreement for the watershed-based implementation funds is with the Chisago SWCD because we did not go a joint powers entity, we went a joint powers collaboration.
Right, but I mean, don't forget, oh, all right, I'm gonna shut up, but don't forget, this is about implementing. This is giving the state access to the local implementation network that can put stuff on the ground. And if we have projects that are ready to go, then we ought to do those. And if we have to push a few studies out a little bit, and I get it, I understand that there's places, we have all the studies in the world in South Washington. I get it. There's studies that need to be done. And I don't disagree with that. But if Bowser wants to turn around and say, well, you said you were going to do a study and now you're going to build this, then we're going to the legislature.
So my thought on this conversation is that we need to really push the process for the 2, 4, 5 subcommittee to really get feedback from the partners about what projects they have ready to go. And if our request for funding for those implementation dollars far exceeds what's available, and it sounds like we do, then we need to have a follow-up conversation about where we shift money from and how we do that. But we have to start this conversation so everybody has the opportunity to submit their shovel-ready projects, because there could be a few others that are ready to go as well, and we just don't have them all on the table yet. So my thought is we just hurry that process up. So because Matt does have a really good project that needs some funding support for, and it is directly contributing to the St. Croix. I've been down that ravine and it is significant and is one of the worst ones I've ever seen. So Craig, Mike, what are your thoughts on how we can move that process forward so we can get all our numbers pulled together on the need?
Jay, and you're exactly right. I mean, let's identify what's ready to go.
Yep.
And then we'll figure out how to move the money.
Mm-hmm.
That's what any good budgeting process does.
I could pull together a subcommittee right away. I mean, Mike and I could start working on it. That's not the issue. I think we need to know the need. I think, yep. Matt, are you looking at $300,000 plus each year of just watershed-based implementation funds?
Yeah, we have 2 projects that are going to be somewhere between 200 and 300,000, and that doesn't count the money that we have in it.
What's the total project cost of each of those projects? Construction costs, not counting engineering and those types of things. Just hire a contractor, construction costs.
Yeah, I think they're both in the 500 range.
Okay.
And I think it actually spark a good conversation too, Matt, because I think people may not be aware of your funding mechanisms and how it differs from the Woodbury side of your watershed and the Mississippi side versus the Denmark Township and the St. Croix side of things. So there's some significant differences there.
Exactly. We have fund reserves in Lower St. Croix, but we don't have the fund reserves that we have in South Washington and East Mississippi. So we have 3 management units, and Lower St. Croix it's deprived of revenue.
Yeah, so his hands are tied a little bit down there in terms of he can't pull money from the west side of his watershed to use on the east side. And that was part of the whole agreement when they took over the Lower St. Croix, or however that happened. What terminology I should use, I don't know. We'll let Matt refine that. But when the Lower St. Croix WMO was dissolved and Valley Branch and South Washington took over those areas, there were some pretty significant legal agreements that were put in place that set up that funding structure. And so it's different than most other watersheds that I'm aware of.
Well, we did it twice. We did East Mississippi and we did Lower St. Croix.
Yep.
And the Lower St. Croix is the one that went to the appeals court twice.
Mm-hmm.
So Angie, can you send out an email to the steering committee requesting their kind of shovel-ready project or plan list for both 2021 and 2022 and an approximate cost estimate included with those? For just the construction, not for the engineering and those types of things.
And approximate construction cost. Yeah, so
Craig, just so you know, we've already paid for the engineering. I mean, this project's on the street for bids right now.
Well, I understand that. No, I completely understand. You're talking money that's above and beyond what we have in the budget for cost share, and that was approved by the policy committee and approved by 2/3 of the boards.
Yep.
No, that's the issue.
But we're gonna have to go back to the policy committee and tell them, we've got these projects ready to go and they're important projects. And this is watershed management and we got to get them done.
So let me repeat out what I think I'm hearing.
I'm sorry, Angie.
No, it's okay. I'm just trying to get a sense for what the next steps are. So I will send out an email to the steering committee asking for shovel-ready projects for 2021 and 2022 and approximate construction costs. And then the subcommittee that is looking at activities 2, 4, and 5 will be meeting in the near future. What is a deadline that you would like me to give people as to when they need to get information to you guys for you to be able to discuss project funding?
Well, Mike, my thought is if the two of them, I think we should have a first meeting be a joint meeting if we're going to have this list. And so I think if people have stuff back to us no later than Friday, May 7th, then we look at pulling together a meeting the week of May 10th at the earliest. And then that week we could have a discussion about the shovel-ready projects and how we're going to move forward with. Mike, do you think that's a good idea?
Yeah, I was wondering, well, when is our next policy committee meeting?
So the tricky
24th.
thing is, the policy committee will meet on the 24th. The steering committee currently isn't scheduled to meet again until the 26th. So the steering committee would actually be meeting later than the policy committee unless folks want to switch that order around and or wait in May to, just kind of give the policy committee an update and then wait until June to actually be giving them the list of projects.
And Craig and everybody, I'm not trying to be a pain. I'm just telling you that, I worked on this for a long time and it was about implementing, and we got projects that are ready to go. And the reason why we joined this effort was because it directly impacts the St. Croix. And we have projects that are directly impacting the St. Croix. And so if we have to temper things for a year or two to get some implementation done, that's, if they're ready to go, let's go. And I'm, like I said, I apologize. I'm not trying to be a pain, but I've been working on this for 15 years, since 2010. I
Yeah,
don't know how many years that is.
Matt, I totally agree. I mean, the priority is implementation, and I want to get it done too. I think the challenge is just now learning that we have to have project funds allocated and rearranged in less than a month in order to make something happen. So it's really more of a timing piece to get our selection criteria put together, collect all the projects, make decisions, and make adjustments. And I'm not saying that it can't be done, but that's the challenge that we're really facing.
Well, and I guess that's why I'm asking also if to buy more time. I mean, we can have a policy committee meeting in May and have it be a relatively short meeting and tell them that we're coming back in June with a list of projects instead of trying to rush it if it's not ready yet.
Exactly, and that's fine. I don't want to, I agree, Mike. And I mean, I just don't want us to get in this bidding war of our project, your project, whatever.
If I'm hearing this right, though, we may be under budgeted in funds for these BMPs, and we have to take money from some of our other activities. So this could cascade throughout our entire work plan. And I think that's going to take a lot of time and a lot of explaining as to why we didn't know or do this a couple months ago.
But it's like any other budget process. You get into your budget, you do your budget for the next year. I mean, we start our budget process next month and for 2022. But you get into it and you go, oh, we didn't think about this, and you have to shift funds.
Yeah, I understand. It's just that this is so different than like a household budget. This is like a whole townhome association budget where everybody all of a sudden has to change a little bit. There's this cascade, so I see it as more complex. But I do know that my board members will love the idea of big, strong, meaningful projects going in right away.
Right, Jamie. It's not XL, Verizon, and Xfinity. It's we got all this stuff, and I kept telling everyone, I think, that Bowser created this process, and now we have this plan that is spread out everywhere. So nothing has priority. It's just spread out because they wanted everything in the kitchen sink. Because Bowser doesn't get it. I worked there. None of the people that we worked with have ever written a watershed plan.
So I saw Matt Downing also has his hand up to join into the conversation. Yeah.
Maybe I should be quiet.
I wasn't saying that. I was just giving the other Matt time to talk.
Maybe another Matt can rage for a while, Matt. Matts are good at raging.
I know. I was like, is this a character trait of the name Matt?
Yes, I rage as well. I mean, I guess I was just going to try and direct us back to the original question of we've got this giant implementation table with a bunch of blank crap in it that has funding amounts associated with it. If nobody's working on that stuff, why is it in here? Why are we arguing about where to get money from? What are we doing? I don't know. I thought that when I was trying to fill it out. So I guess I'm a little bit on Matt's side, shockingly. Not really. We're both angry all the time, right, Matt? I guess I want to direct it back to that. It's like we never answered that question. We've got this giant table with a bunch of blank spaces in it. Are these things really priorities? Are we really working on these things? If nobody's working on them, why are we allocating funding to them? And if we're allocating funding and nobody's working on it, who's going to spend the funding?
So I think the blank spaces are not ones that are getting WBIF funding. They're ones that were written in that would get worked on with local funds. And so the question is, are they actually being worked on with local funds, or was that an aspiration of partners? And I know Jamie kind of said the same thing as you, Maddie said, you know, we might want to look at the priority level because some of those things were included in the plan, but listed as low priorities. And were we perhaps just being too nice when putting together the plan? You know, we felt bad kicking the things out of the plan, but we don't actually have the capacity to work on them. I don't know what you do about that now, but maybe if we're just honest up front, like these things are lower priority things, and realistically, after we've looked at our state and local funds available, we aren't going to be able to work on them in the next 2 years, just so that nobody has false expectations.
I mean, we have kind of 3 parallel conversations
I
going
know.
on here. We have the fill in the blanks in the comprehensive plan table to show what activities are happening outside of watershed-based funding. We have the annual work plan conversation too. We have to actually tell Bowser what we're doing as part of the annual work plan. And that, I presume, has to be part of like the whole comprehensive plan, not just the watershed-based funding, or is the annual work plan just the watershed-based funding? That's not clear to me. And then this last bit is we're having a conversation about shifting the watershed-based funding around to address some immediate needs for implementation on the process to move forward with that. So Matt, to answer your question, I think I like what Karen said about the gaps being a good thing, and that we over time can address the overall comprehensive plan to modify that, to like take stuff out if it's not a priority, and we just threw it in there because, like Matt Moore said, it's like everything in the kitchen sink was thrown in there. We can change that. And I'm not too worried about the non-watershed based funding piece of this whole formula. It's more of just how do we meet the minimum requirements of Bowser for reporting to make Emily and Craig's lives as easy as possible, to make sure that they have clarity on what they're supposed to put into the forms and then send to Bowser.
Well, remember though, remember this is all about, Bowser doesn't tell you how you're not meeting the requirements.
Right.
You tell them how you are meeting the requirements. So everybody's got to remember that. You got to tell them, no, you're wrong.
So what
maybe you and I are ornery because we're Matts.
So what I was writing in my notes earlier, and kind of to answer one of your questions, Jay, there is an annual WBIF work plan that we already submitted to Bowser, and it was approved. So that is done. But then there was this suggestion, it's a kind of a question as to whether it's a requirement or a suggestion, that we have an overarching annual plan that says everything we're all doing together as a partnership, not just the WBIF funded stuff. And that's the thing that I would like to make as simple as possible so that it doesn't create additional work. And kind of pulling together what different people have suggested, perhaps that's as simple as a map showing potential locations of projects and pollution reduction estimates, and then a verbal description of programs like education and ag that will be happening. Plus,
yeah, I'm going where Karen's going, I think, but
No?
Karen,
Okay.
yeah,
No,
Karen.
I'm not sure. But why? So we don't have to do this list.
Yeah.
Let's not.
Yeah.
And let's do an annual report when we've done it. Let's just finish what we're going to do. Let's just focus in on what the Matts are talking about. What are we, how do we get this funding to where we need it to go? I am totally awesome with like, let's get shovel ready things in, but I also just want to remember, and that fact that some of us have the ability to be shovel ready because we do have the budgets and the funding that we do in our areas, and that we've been able to prepare for this money coming forward, to make sure that we just don't rip all of that preparation away from some of those northern more areas, so that we're still at least being somewhat thoughtful to figuring out how do we find out if they have a project just like Matt's talking about up north that we just don't know it's even there yet. but I agree with these projects, but let's just not do what you're asking right now. Like, let's just not tell them everything everywhere. Let's just do it first and then report in on what we really did.
Okay, so I guess that's a question. I mean, Dan and Barb made it sound like it was something we had to do, but I'm hearing you all say, no, that's something we don't have to do. And I'm especially hearing Matt Morris saying, no, we tell them this is what we are doing and this is how we are meeting your requirements. Instead
In our
of,
joint powers agreement, it says the advisory committee shall draft and prepare a proposed annual work plan, ranking projects, programs, blah, blah, blah. The policy committee shall vote to recommend the proposed annual work plan to the governing bodies of the parties for approval. I voted 2/3 of the members present. And then the governing bodies shall vote on a membership of 2/3 to approve the annual plan. So it specifically says in the joint powers agreement signed by the 16 members that they shall do these things.
But haven't we already done that for the watershed-based funding?
It just says an annual work plan. Now, Emily, you're usually on top of these things. Does our comprehensive watershed management plan say both a watershed-based implementation funds work plan and an annual plan? I thought Barb keeps going back to that.
I think so. I had the page, but let me try to find it.
Because Barb keeps saying that you put it in your plan that you're going to develop this annual plan of work. And it also says any amendments to the annual plan of work, which Matt Moore is talking about, would require a 2/3 vote of the policy committee and then would require a 2/3 vote of their governing boards. And then it would have to go to Bowser for a recommendation in the work plan amendment for the watershed-based implementation funds. So like Mike Eisner said, this is not something that's going to be done in 30 days. We'll be lucky if this is done by our July board meetings, to be honest with you. Just the way we set up our agreements. Because governing boards have 60 days after the recommendation of the policy committee to make and take an action.
okay.
And maybe this whole process will really help us realize that a joint powers entity would be a much smoother process moving forward than a joint powers collaboration.
Yeah, I'm really struggling to just figure out what it is that we're doing next, or what it is that we're bringing to the policy committee next.
Is there any reason we can't take the Excel spreadsheet with the 60 some items or whatever it is and just have that be adopted as our annual plan of work and we're done?
Just for the purposes of our joint powers agreement?
Just for that purpose.
That's
I'm
kind of
sorry,
what
but
I
I think that's just stupid. This is the first round that we're going through in this. The policy committee has no control over what I, as Browns Creek Watershed District, am doing in regards to whether or not it impacts the Lower St. Croix or not. It's a waste of time. I mean, I agree with reporting back, like, as a group, to make sure we understand where did everybody do something this year with your own funds? Where do we still have gaps? Where do we need to seek new funding in the future that this policy committee would help us with? But they don't have any control over each one of these individual organizations. Let's not set this up from the front. And I'd be willing to go head to head with Bowser on the fact that these are the exact words of how this is stated. Then we need to change those words, not this process, because super time consuming for no benefit.
Yeah, I did actually say that same thing to Karen back when Dan and Barb first brought this up. I said, I don't understand, because this entity has no jurisdiction over any of the local governments. So how should they be able to approve an annual plan that, that's over anything other than what the BIF funds are going towards?
I think the one thing that we really should focus on is that, the only real benefit of this overall comprehensive watershed management plan reporting would be helping us coordinate our activities. And so as long as we're coordinating our activities, then I think that, and reporting on how we're coordinating and how we have all these complementary programs in place, is going to serve a function. And I think potentially satisfy a lot of those issues and concerns with Bowser. And then we can, from that process, then identify what we take out of the comprehensive plan overall, if we, what things we keep and what things we take out. And I think the educator and the new educator and, the other staff members that we're bringing on board can really help with that conversation. So I don't want to spend any more time talking about this. Let's do what we have to do for Bowser. Emily already posted in the chat that it sounds like we can call the watershed-based implementation funding the annual work plan. So we're done with that. And then
Okay.
let's get the process moving forward to then identify all of our shovel-ready projects and see how much we have to change our proposed budget and make sure that everybody has an opportunity to provide input on that conversation.
So let me just suggest at the moment, the policy committee is scheduled to meet again on May 24th. Now, if there is no pressing need to meet on May 24th, we could cancel that meeting and say we're not going to meet until June or until July as a policy committee, and you guys can tell me what you think is best. But if we were to meet in May, we could just give them, in the interest of just having them be informed and feel confident that this process is moving forward, we could give them an update on this is how things are going with the subcommittees. This is when you can expect to see a list of the actual shovel-ready projects that will be happening. And P.S., here are some other things that local partners have said that they are doing on their own, just so you know that this isn't the only stuff that's happening toward this overarching watershed plan.
Angie, did you write that down?
I can write it down. I didn't write it down while I was speaking it out loud.
I think that sounds like a good plan. I think we should tell them in May.
Okay.
It's all about the care and feeding of a board.
Yeah, I mean, that's the thing, is that I feel like if we don't check back in with them and say something, they start to feel like, is this group doing anything? What's going on? They start to have too many questions.
Well, we're going to have a lot of updates for them because we will potentially have new staff as well. So that's important.
So I have one last question, then I'll shut up.
And Craig has his hand up.
And Craig has his hand up. Go ahead, Craig.
I guess my question would be, especially for the Metro partners who do a lot more of the comprehensive watershed management planning, what we heard from especially Barb over the years about this process and the need for the annual plan was we as a group collectively put a lot of things in our implementation table. And we have a lot of things we're finding out right now that have zero funding attached to them for watershed-based implementation funds. And maybe it was a mistake on our part, but we put those items in there regardless. And when they come back to do their 2, 5, 10-year reviews of our plan, how does Bowser handle that with you guys if you have a plan that you said you're going to implement these things and you don't implement that? And again, I'm asking that question because I don't have to go through the comprehensive watershed management planning process as a non-Metro partner. This was the first time we've gone through it, so I'm going to look to my Metro partners for that answer.
You assume they have far more time than they do. So about every 20 years of your existence, you get put on a list to get reviewed, and they give you 20 questions and tell you to go through your stuff and tell you whether or not you're implementing. I think you get fast tracked if you have somebody who pulls together a petition to dissolve you as an organization. And you maybe get like a couple more questions. But other than that, as long as you can prove you are getting some stuff done and you prioritize, I mean, it's a plan. It's opportunities arise, priorities change. You're going to amend it as time goes by, but this is a plan with, what are we, 13, 15, 400 organizations? It's a lot of moving parts and things are going to change. And this is the first year. No one is coming back to us next year to say, well, you're dissolved, give back the $1 million because you did it wrong. Nobody's doing that. I mean, we just need to show where the money is going and that we did something beneficial to the resource. We collaborated, we got these new positions going, we got these projects in the ground. Those are all great things that wouldn't have happened if this plan didn't exist. And we just need to be able to tell that story but don't freak out about line by line. There is literally no power they have over us as a group. What are they going to do? Dissolve the Lower St. Croix one watershed, one plan? Well, then we all just keep going and doing our things. We're fine. We're fine.
Hey,
Thank
Craig,
you.
this is
Craig.
Jamie. I've seen, certainly the cases where Bowser's, chased after a little bit organizations that weren't keeping up and withheld funding for that reason. For me, I see this more as a policy committee communication tool. Where are we on track? Where are we behind and where are we ahead? That's all I think they may want to know. And then that way we keep anything very simple.
I agree with you, Jamie. And what Karen just said in a long-winded way is all you got to do is throw poop at the wall. And if it sticks, they go on about their business.
Matt, I think you mean eloquently said.
Yes. So my last question is, I want to hear from some of the other people and then I'll shut up. I'd like to hear from Mike and all the others, just what they think.
I guess
Well,
I'll just piggyback on Matt too before you start talking, Mike, especially some of the northern partners. I'm looking at you folks up in Isani and Pine because I don't want all the southern partners to drown you out. Go, Mike. Sorry for the interruption.
Yeah, and my initial thought is while we've been talking, I've been going through the plan and going back to the great gatekeeper criteria and then the criteria for ranking projects. And so I think, Angie, when you send that request for projects out, I'm going to try to get this in a document real quick so that folks can give us their answers to those questions to make our evaluation process and development of an official process a little bit easier. But yeah, I mean, I'm certainly want to prioritize getting projects on the ground. I think we're off to a good start, but I feel like it took a long time to get to this point. And I think that the tight timeline is going to be our biggest challenge if Matt's hoping to build this ravine project in June, and he would like to have funding allocated after consideration of everybody's potential shovel-ready projects. So I'm just more focused on the task at hand of getting that information together and working with Craig and with our existing schedule to try to get the urban and ag cost share selection process and recommendation process up and running.
So Mike, would you be kind of guiding me with, as I'm sending an email out to everybody with what to ask them? So it's more than just, hey, everybody send me your list of shovel-ready projects.
Yeah, that's what I'm hoping.
Okay.
That's what I'm hoping to do. So that the information we get is everything that we need to be moving forward efficiently.
Okay. Caleb, were you hoping to talk? Is that why you appeared?
Yeah, I appreciate this as kind of a kick in the butt that we need aggressively keep moving so those shovel-ready projects can happen, but not at the expense of being hasty when there's 13 partners and everybody's kind of trying to move along the ball down the field together. So we just got to be aggressive, but not hasty. And I'm excited to get together going with these subcommittees. And for example, with having projects shovel ready, we've engaged like NRCS and our SWCD here about some ag BMP projects, potential landowners and all that. And some of that we kind of got stalled out with some questions of what does the cost share look like? What are the contracting terms? Some of that stuff. So it's not shovel ready because we got too many outstanding questions.
Yep. No, Caleb, you're exactly right. And I agree. I mean, we got to be able to balance it.
Yep. So I think you're getting support here, though, that people don't want to hold you up, but we also got to give the whole process what it deserves.
I said I'd shut up, but I just want to tell you guys I like working with all of you. That's serious. Jay and I have been doing this for a long time, and this group in the Lower St. Croix it's been fun.
Matt, I have a question for you. What's your time frame for construction? Because like I said, I honestly don't see, I think the earliest this could be going to our local boards for approval would be in July.
Yeah, I mean, the bids are out right now. We'll have bids. Project's probably gonna start mid-May, I think. I'd have to ask John, but I think we're in that time frame. Jay?
You said construction's gonna start in May, Matt?
Yep.
Well then, Matt, I mean, we can't use these funds for that because the contract has to be in place prior to the project starting.
Yep.
So I mean, you know the process with Bowser.
We'll push back the start date if we have to.
Matt, are there other funds for this? I mean, it's out to bid now, and often project wouldn't go out to bid until it had the funding secured. Maybe that's not the case in this project?
No. We've got funds. We just don't have a big reserve to pay for it. But I mean, again, it's like I've always said, we're going to build this project. We took it from Jay. You know, we're still working on easements, but it's going to be May, June, July, somewhere in there where it's going to go.
And Matt, I would love to get a hold of this project as part of the overall, because the pollution reduction numbers would be phenomenal. And I mean, the project's going in regardless, and so we could really use those pollution reduction numbers in the match. It's
Well,
just
yeah.
the timing wise.
Yeah, except for PCA won't let multiple entities take credit. So that's a whole nother day worth of conversation.
So would you not be bringing pollution reduction numbers forward with this project?
No, we'll bring them.
Okay. Well, Angie, if you get that email out, Mike and I'll get moving on getting committees together, but it has the processes to go through the committees, then to the planning team, then ultimately through the steering committee. And if it takes amendments to the plan, it's gonna have to go back to the policy committee and then back to the local boards. This is not gonna be a quick process. It's a joint powers collaboration, unfortunately.
Okay, so I am just going to repeat what I think we all agreed on. So the first thing is that I will work with Mike on developing an email to send to all of the steering committee partners to request shovel-ready projects to potentially get funded through activities 2, 4, and 5 of the WBIF grant. And we will plan on continuing to have the May 24th policy committee meeting, provide them updates on what the subcommittees have been working on, work completed thus far, let them know that they will get a list with projects later in the summer, June or July. Give them some idea of how we will be tracking and reporting our progress toward implementing the watershed plan and goals in the WBIF grant. Just give them a very basic overview of some of the other things partners are doing with local funding that go toward our larger goal, and hopefully introduce the new educator. Hopefully we'll have somebody there then to be introduced to the group. Are there any additional things that everybody wants to talk about right now while we're gathered together as a steering committee, or does anybody want to disagree that those are the next steps?
That works for me.
Okay. So it sounds like potentially, Emily, you and I are no longer on the hook for having to try to create an annual plan, but maybe I will just coordinate with you on how we are sharing out information to the policy committee. I mean, it sounds like you're on top of how we're doing the tracking and reporting, so that can be an update that you provide to them when we have the policy committee meeting.
I actually can't attend the next policy committee.
Oh, you
meeting.
can't? Okay.
But it's all written down, so you can put that in the packet and
Sure, okay.
So you're saying where you're going, there won't even be a Wi-Fi, or you want to have a remote hotspot you can use? Come on, Emily. Oh, Joy.
No.
I do caution the group. I think they're going to come back at us and want an annual plan of work. I think Bowser's going to keep pushing that envelope, so we need to be ready to push back. I'm just letting you know.
My suggestion in response to that is that we're going to have that task be kind of a joint effort with the new staff members involved as well. And that it's going to be more of a communication tool in coordinating with the policy committee and then coordinating partner activities. So if Bowser says anything, we can give them we can respond to them to put it off until we figure out exactly what we want to do with this.
We can give them direction. And as Jay and I always say, this is about poking the bear. We do not have to listen to them.
So what we really want to do, I think, in the next phase of this process is figure out what's going to best serve the resources, the residents, and our policy committee. And that's the product we're going to prepare. And then convince Bowser that's what they want. Because it makes the most sense. And that's a communication outreach tool that serves a lot of benefits.
Yeah, and the word's not convince, Jay, it's tell them.
Inform.
You know I'm more of a diplomat than that, Matt, but yes.
I know you are. That's why I'm here.
I just want to welcome Zach. Most of our meetings aren't this much discussion, so just want to
You're welcome, Zach.
But this is a good insight to personalities of the group, though, that's for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, I know I shouldn't mess with anyone named Matt.
Yeah,
There you
no,
go.
seriously, don't. Oh, Caleb says you also have a lot of rage. Okay, the Matts and the Zach.
I'll get there.
Hey guys, I really gotta go.
Okay.
Anything else that we need to touch on today that you need me for?
I don't think so. I think we hit on everything that I wanted to know. So
Mike and I will.
I'm sorry for being a pain. I got to go too.
yeah,
Mike
no,
and I'll
that's
get
okay. I think
together
we're
and-
all gonna go now.
Yeah, Mike and I'll get together and get stuff moving. So thank you.
Okay.
That was fun, everybody. Thank you so
All
much.
right.
All right.
Thanks, everybody.
Bye, y'all.